To mine or not to mine? Good afternoon. This is Natasha Gutierrez reporting live from Makati for Rappler.com. I'm here at the Conference on Mining's Impact on Philippine Economy and Ecology. Several industry leaders from both sides of the issue are expected to speak here today. The conference is organized by the Philippine Chambers of Commerce and Industry, Management Association of the Philippines, and Financial Executives of the Philippines. This as the government amends its executive order on mining. The goal is to engage stakeholders in intelligent conversation and hopefully to come up with an acceptable solution that advances responsible mining, sustainable development, and economic growth. With me is business editor of Rappler, Lala Ramando, to shed light on what to expect here today. Good afternoon, Lala.
Hello.
Lala, so could you give us a brief background of what led us here today? How significant is this conference?
Actually, this conference happens every year, but this year it's specifically important because of its timing. There's an executive order in the palace that's awaiting finalization, and that executive order is very controversial. It affects people's lives, not here in Metro Manila, not here in this hotel, but people's lives, lives of people who are living in the mountains, in areas which may seem barren to us, but there are a lot of minerals inside of those mountains. So this event is important because it's going to influence, hopefully, a policy that will either have an impact on people's, that will either make lives better for people elsewhere or provide another big dollar resource for the Philippines.
And who are you most looking forward to hearing speak today?
We're looking forward to the speech specifically of Mr. Manny Pangilinan, who heads Philex Mining Corporation, the biggest gold and copper producer in the Philippines, and Ms. Regina Lopez, who is one of the most
of the Philippines, together with
she's very passionate about being an anti-mining.
Okay, and it seems that the conference is now starting, so let's stay tuned. Thank you for staying with us at Rappler.
Conference to order. To deliver the welcome remarks, we call on the Vice President for Environment of Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Mr. Edgardo Lacson. Let's give him a big hand.
Government officials, if there are any, friends in media, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of PCCI, MAP, and PHINEX, I welcome our illustrious resource persons today, representing the two sides of the mining issue. In the news lately is the plan of government to amend the mining policies by the end of February this year. The announcement triggered various reactions among stakeholders. Investors in general are alarmed because they view this initiative as a game-changing rule that sends a wrong signal about the stability of our policy environment. But for those who are advocating a total ban on the extractive industry, they are keenly awaiting the executive order to include more stringent rules in mining operation, if a complete closure is not yet possible. From what we read, government mainly wants to enhance its revenues from mining. Yesterday, business papers headlined government's plan to delay the measure to get more inputs from all stakeholders, hopefully from this forum. Probably a good or bad decision on the part of government, depending on where one stands on the mining issue. Mining is a basic industry that touches every facet of modern industries and economies. It is reported that the Philippines is the world's fifth most mineralized country with an estimated $1 trillion in extractable commodities. On the other hand, the country is also blessed with natural beauties aside from its people. Some of the tourist spots, such as the rice terraces, Palawan, Underground River, beaches in Boracay, Amon, Pulo, Chocolate Hills of Bohol, Cabsur, and many other sites, many of which yet undiscovered, need to be protected. And this is where mining activities and environmental concerns intertwine and clashes. We have seen and heard the escalating high-intensity pronouncement and manifestos of both sides for many years now. Both have practically declared war against each other to win the hearts and mind of government and the public. Today, we have a forum like no other. We bring the unarmed combatants to figuratively shoot down each other with the power of logic and reason, to enlighten us and our policymakers on the issues which they advocate. PCCI, MAP, and PHINEX have sponsored this debate because we believe that any issue is like cheese. No matter how thinly you slice it, there are always two sides. Although lawyers claim there are three: your side, his side, and the right side. On this note, let me thank the organizers, the resource persons, and all participants for coming to this event to define their role in helping our country move towards prosperity through responsible mining that cares for and protects the environment. But let us not forget that we may be sleeping in different beds, but we share the same dreams. Maraming salamat po. Mabuhay.
Thank you, Mr. Ed Lacson. From the business sector, a lot of questions are often asked. What is responsible mining? Is there such a thing as responsible mining? What's wrong with the mining industry in pursuing its industry goals? What is the role of business of mining in conflict zones? Our subject matter this afternoon is very interesting and controversial. The mining industry is committed to the prosperity of the Philippine economy by bringing it to greater heights. On the other hand, the environmental advocates assert that no business should not disturb our ecological balance. The objective of this forum is to present the different perspectives so that all of us can understand the key points of the mining industry. In the interest of time, we'll dispense with the lengthy introduction of introducing our guest speakers. Instead, we have attached their biodata to the program. Each speaker is given 15 minutes to make his or her presentation. I repeat, 15 minutes. 15. You will hear the sound. Okay, that's our sound effects. You will hear the sound when the speaker has consumed 15 minutes. Upon hearing the doorbell, the speaker is expected to wind up quickly. A 1-minute extension will be allowed. Beyond 1 minute, will be compelled to turn off the microphone. Sorry, I have to be very strict. Our first speaker will talk about government perspective. Please welcome the Director of Mines and Geosciences Bureau, Engineer Leo Hazareno. Let's give him a round of applause.
To the organizers of this very important forum, to my fellow presenters, to my colleagues in the mining industry, colleagues in government service, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat. Shall we mine or not? And the Philippine government ever since has decided that it has to pursue mining. There are a number of reasons, but essentially this is because of the country's resource base. The Philippines is situated along the Pacific Rim of Fire that extends from the tip of South America to North America, East Asia, and Oceania. This is a belt of volcanoes and an extensive and continuous zone of colliding tectonic plates. On one hand, this has brought to the country devastating natural hazards, landslides, earthquakes, and so on. But on the other hand, this has resulted in the formation of abundant mineral resources of gold, copper, iron, chromite, nickel, cobalt, platinum, among others. And the areas defining this belt, the Pacific Rim of Fire, are now the primary producers of copper and gold in the whole world today. Government is aware that left on the ground, these minerals cannot generate wealth, and the country needs wealth. This explains why the pursuit of mining finds basis in the Philippine Constitution. The following portion of Section 2, Article 12 of the Philippine Constitution is very clear. The state may directly undertake co-production, joint venture, or production sharing agreements either by itself or through contractors. And cognizant of the various impacts of mining, the Philippine Mining Act of 1995, through its declaration of policy, very clearly spelled out the terms of reference. All minerals in public and private lands within the territory of the Philippines are owned by the state. This is the so-called Regalian Doctrine. But the second sentence is more important. It shall be the responsibility of the state to promote their rational exploration, development, utilization, and conservation through the combined efforts of the government and the private sector in order to enhance national growth in a way that effectively safeguards the environment and protect the rights of affected communities. National growth, environment, communities. In effect, the Philippine Mining Act, together with its implementing rules and regulations, enshrine the principles of responsible mining. It placed a strong focus on not only life of the mine, environmental and social responsibilities, but also after mining or post-mining environmental and social responsibilities. It ensured the equitable sharing of benefits and, more importantly, protected the rights of not only communities but also the indigenous peoples. In the pursuit of mining, the Mining Act does not work alone. Other major laws must also be followed, such as the NIPAS, the National Integrated Protected Area System, which is the protector of protected areas. The Indigenous Peoples' Rights Act, or IPRA, which is the protector of the rights and interests of indigenous peoples. The environmental laws, such as the Clean Water Act, the Clean Air Act, the environmental impact statement, among others, the local government code, the forestry code, and the small-scale mining laws. And it is noteworthy that each of these laws has its own set of very stringent requirements to ensure that an extractive industry like mining is done properly. And not all areas are open to mining. The Philippine Mining Act expressly provides that the following areas are close to mining: old growth or virgin forests, proclaimed watershed forest reserves, and all other protected areas. They are absolutely close to mining. They are beyond the commerce of man. Critical watersheds, government reservations, built-up areas, ancestral domains, ancestral lands, unless the free and prior informed consent are secured from them. Coastal areas, which are the strip of land 200 meters from the mean low tide level going landward, or 500 meters from the mean low tide level going seaward. And lastly, other areas expressly prohibited by law. One of the most critical provisions of the Mining Act is the required rehabilitation of mined-out areas. Mining operations of the past have left behind legacy mines, mines that were simply abandoned by the mining operators without doing rehabilitation works. They are not just gaping holes, but also sources or causes of acid mine drainage, siltation, ghost towns, and other nightmares to people of the host communities. They have become the rallying point of people who oppose new mining projects on the simple understanding that such new mining projects will end up as new legacy mines. The final mine rehabilitation decommissioning plan being imposed by the Mining Act shall be the antidote for the legacy mines. Cradle to grave to cradle. A forest area shall be disturbed to extract the minerals, where mining becomes a temporary land use. Then after mining, the mined out area shall be reforested to become a forest again. The use of the land is sustained from forest use to mining use to forest use. With the implementation of the Mining Act, there is now a total of 778 mining permits and contracts, covering a total of 1.14 million hectares, or 3.8% of the country's total land area. It has to be clarified, however, that such hectareage is still subject to relinquishment and will not be totally impacted by actual mining. And out of the 778 mining contracts and permits, there are only 31 operating metallic mines comprised of 3 copper mines, 5 gold mines, 3 chromite mines, 1 magnetite mine, and 18 nickel mines. This is in addition to 1 nickel processing plant, 1 copper processing plant, and 55 operating non-metallic mines, plus a great number of sand and gravel and other non-metallic operations. There are also at least 8 projects in the feasibility or development or construction stage that will contribute to Philippine mineral production in 2 to 3 years. In terms of industry performance, mining has been progressively improving since 2004. For 2011, the large-scale metallic mining sector posted a gross production value of 122.1 billion, or a 9% increase from last year's 112 billion pesos. This positive trend, notwithstanding the perceived uncertainty in the mining sector, was set by new entrants to the production stream, together with the favorable metal prices in the world market. It is noteworthy, however, that the contribution of mining to GDP has not been able to break the 1.5% barrier for a long time now. Mining's contribution to total exports is also similarly situated. In terms of percentage contribution to the overall production, gold, nickel, and copper were the key players. Gold took the lead, accounting for 52% of the total production value. Nickel followed with 29% and copper with 16%. In terms of growth rate, silver and zinc displayed the highest improvements at 132% and 106% respectively. And with 18 nickel mines, the Philippines is now the second in global mine production based on the recent report of the USGS, and second only to Russia. The country ranked number 4 in 2009 and number 3 in 2010. For an industry that has been haunted by sins of the past, its growth and sustainability is threatened by serious challenges, such as the perception of mining as an environmental despoiler, lapses and delinquencies by miners, the lack of monitoring capability of government, the insufficient national mineral resources inventory, insufficient government share from the use of minerals, the security of investments, and the opposition of local government units to mining. There is also the issue of small-scale mining, for we have about 200 to 300,000 small-scale miners in the country, and most of them have no permits. They use mercury, and they discharge their waste right into the environment of the river systems. We have a lot of issues on small-scale mining. Also, land use conflicts. Mining as a land use is in conflict with other land uses like farmlands, ancestral domain, KBA, key biodiversity areas, proposed protected areas, because proposed protected areas are still open to mining, ecotourism areas, agrarian reform projects, forestry projects, and fishing grounds. In response to these challenges, the DENR has pursued various policy reforms, such as the use it or lose it policy, which has led us to the cancellation of several mining applications, enrolling the mining industry in the National Greening Program, participating in initiatives leading to the EITI, and responding to the legislative challenges to the Mining Act, because we know that as we speak, there are now at least 7 mining bills in Congress looking for, in one way or the other, changing or repealing the Philippine Mining Act of 1995. Pursuing the early resolution of cases filed against mining projects, such as the petitions for writ of kalikasan and the TEPO. As we speak, again, the number of petitions for writ of kalikasan against mining is growing. And then intensifying IEC campaign. And still the challenges remain. The Philippine government is very much aware that many issues continue to confront the mining industry, issues that are even threatening its existence as a development option. This is the main reason why a mining study group was created and tasked to formulate the mining policy and address the environmental and social issues and come up with a socially acceptable mining industry in the country. In the end, it should be mining that significantly contributes to economic growth in a manner that mitigates the impacts of the environment and improves the quality of life of the people, or no mining at all. Maraming salamat.
Just right on time. Thank you very much, Director Hasareno, for your informative and relevant views. Now we call on our only lady speaker, the Managing Director of ABS-CBN Foundation. Please welcome Ms. Gina Lopez. Let's give her a round of applause. Wait, 15 minutes. Don't time me yet. I have to, this is not, I have to go there because I cannot see well. Okay. So I'm not going to greet anyone. All right. Biodiversity. Biodiversity is life. It's a different flora and fauna that make this planet come alive. It's fresh air, it's food, it's water. Without biodiversity, the planet would look like the moon. 70% of the biodiversity of the entire planet is found in 17 very, very blessed megadiversity countries. The Philippines is one of them. We are not only one of the 17 megadiversity countries, we are also number one in endemicity. What's endemicity? Endemicity is when the flora and the fauna cannot be found anywhere else in the world, only here. And per unit area, we're number one. Now, we take this in context of an island ecosystem, because I'm not against the whole mining industry, but I am just saying, in an island, in an island ecosystem, okay, in an island ecosystem where there's mountains and forests and mangroves and coral reefs and farmlands, you know, it's an interweave of ecological systems. It's very different from Canada or Australia with huge tracts of land. This is an interweave of ecological systems where biodiversity thrives. My stand is that in an island ecosystem, whether large scale or small scale, mining is grossly irresponsible. So maybe you'll take back your claps now. Okay, let's look at the biodiversity. This is the biodiversity that was plotted. My timing is okay. This is the biodiversity that was plotted by Conservation International. Okay, and this red thing here is a mining tenement. How can you have mining in a biodiversity place? Okay, because no amount of reforestation will bring back an ecological system. No amount of planting trees does not replicate an ecological system. Look at this. There's mining tenements in biodiversity areas because, as Mr. Jesureno has said, areas of biodiversity are also rich in mineral resources. So the question is, what choice will we make? And I submit, in no uncertain terms, that if there's biodiversity and there's rich mineral resources, the choice must always be on the side of biodiversity, because I would like you to know that for the Rio de Janeiro summit, the Philippines committed that we would protect our biodiversity at all costs. All right, so then so you take the island ecosystem, and on top of that, you're aware of the fact that as the typhoons circle the planet, the Philippines is the number one typhoon-hit country in the planet. So you have mining in biodiversity areas, and then we have horrendous typhoons. Isn't that too much of a risk? Okay, let's take Palawan. Okay, look at the biodiversity in Palawan. 379 species of corals, 259 species of birds. It's a biodiversity paradise, and you will all agree, because I'm sure many of you have been there. Look at the biodiversity in Palawan. And then look at that. You know what those colored squares are? Mining applications.
in the very same sites of biodiversity. And yes, they're applications, they're not operations. But that's precisely why we need to come up with a really strong policy, especially in Palawan, that there should not be any mining anymore. So look at these pictures. These are mining roads in the forests of Palawan. That's a violation of the Palawan law. Okay, that's an abandoned mine site. It's been abandoned since the 80s. That's another abandoned mine site. Okay, that, you know, and Jerry, as I said, I really like you, and there's nothing personal. But this is Rio Tuba. Okay, and I actually brought a farmer here who said he can remember when there was once lush with forest. Okay, that's Rio Tuba. Okay, and I actually, you know, I wanted to see myself, so I flew over the whole island of Palawan for 2 hours. Okay, and again, Jerry, I really like you, but actually, the incidence of poverty in Batarasa is 53%. It's double the national average. Okay, look at this. It's mining on top of the rice fields. That's mining on top of the rice fields of Palawan. Okay, that's the rice fields that have been disadvantaged, 55 hectares. I took that shot myself with the iPad, and you can see the mining road is just on top of the rice fields. Okay, look at that. That just happened a few months ago when a Chinese vessel rammed into 979 square meters of corals. Now, you all know it takes thousands of years to form corals. Well, they just destroyed it. Who pays for that? Mining in an island ecosystem should never, never be. Look at this. This is mining on top of the rice fields. That's the sea. That's lateritic soil. You can't grow rice there. And look at this. Oh, somebody has to move there so I can. Okay. Look at this. This is a study, and Dr. Lina is here now, where she took samples. So when the mining industry says that mining is not bad for agriculture, I'm going to show them this test. Okay, chromium here, the allowable is 100. Look at that. That's 762. The allowable nickel is 5 to 50. Look at that, 2,820. And the allowable is 50. Where is all this nickel coming from? And look at the iron. The iron is 25,600, and that's 108,000. Okay, then I went to another island. As you can see, I'm now going to many islands. And so I went to this Rapu-Rapu because they told me it's the most tightly monitored mine in the country. So I wanted to see it. So what I saw was an island which was lush, and then I see that. And I said, how could you have mining at the tip of an island in Bicol? My God, you know how horrendous the typhoons are there? And what if something happens? I think the very fact of putting mining at the tip of the island is irresponsible. Okay, then that's the corals of Bicol, and that's what happened after the mine spill. Okay, that's a few years back when the tailing pond overflowed. It went to the river, it went to the stream, it went to the river, it went to the sea, and you had a fish kill. Okay, then I went to Manikani, you know, this island in Samar. And I was looking down from the chopper and I looked at that, and you know what that is? That's corals. It's gorgeous. We have no idea how amazing our country is. And I saw these corals, and then I'm flying near the island. And by the way, that mining company has an MPSA for the entire island. And around the island is a marine reserve. So I go near there. I mean, okay, can you click that, and when I went there, it was raining, and I literally saw with my own eyes this red water going to the sea. And you think that around the island is a marine reserve? Mining in islands is just too much of a risk. Okay, then I'm going to show you this. This is Surigao. Okay, so you have to make it sound louder. Think about the chopper goes on, and it just goes on and on and on and on. What's that? Okay, and then you take, and I think someone here is from Marinduque, because you all know about the Marinduque disaster, where the tailings went to the river, where that's acid, where the river has turned acidic, and up to now, that river is biologically dead. It affected the rice fields, you know, look at the health effects. Okay, then I'm going to tell you about Dubai. And I saw Eric here, who's the head of SM. I said nothing personal, okay? But I'm going to tell you the story of Dubai. And the mayor is here, so you could ask her if I'm telling the truth. So, Dubai is this area where the mayor, the vice mayor, the Sangguniang Bayan, the governor, everyone said, yes, come mine in Dubai because we're going to have jobs, it's good for the economy. So this is what Dubai looked like before. And that's what Dubai looks like now. Okay, then I asked her, so why did you allow the mining? And she said, Mom, because we wanted the fees. Well, how much are the fees? You know what she told me? For every ton, okay, for every ton of soil that comes out from Dubai and goes to China, you know how much they get? 25 pesos. 25 pesos? A ton? Okay, then I asked her, how much money did you get the first year? You know what she told me? 44 million pesos. And I was thinking, 44 million pesos and it's 25 pesos, 25 pesos. How many tons did they get? So I calculated and it came out to 1.8 million tons. Okay, so the first year she got these 44 million pesos, and because the mining company was using heavy machinery, it upgraded to large-scale mining, which means that the mining company continues to get these tons of soil from Dubai and the municipality gets zero. Because the money now goes to the national government. Okay, that's what's happening in Dubai. On top of that, they can't use their road. That road was built with municipal funds and they haven't been able to use that road for several years because it's guarded by the military. Okay, then every time it rains, the roads are filled with red water. Okay, let's see, look at this. So their coral reefs are, their coral reefs are gone, their fish sanctuary is gone, and look at this. That purple there is 4 billion pesos. That's the amount of money the mining company makes. And that thin sliver there, that's what Dubai gets. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the law. It's the law. And yet the very source of that 4 billion pesos is that municipality, and that's what they get. Now you tell me, is this fair? And what she gets is roads filled with toxic water, her fish sanctuary gone, she can't use her barangay road, and for all that suffering, that's what she gets. All right, now I want to talk to you about the alternatives. Puerto Princesa, my boast, I really like this place. Okay, Puerto Princesa has said no mining, no logging. They went agriculture, they went tourism. Okay, look at the numbers of Puerto Princesa. From 50 million to over 10 billion. From 7 to 32 banks. From 3 to 110 hotels. From 12,000 to 500,000 tourists. From 1 flight a week to 13 flights a day. And they banned mining and banned logging. And the rest of Palawan, which is doing mining, fares nowhere near those kind of economic indicators. In fact, Jerry, I love you, but the poverty level in Batarasa is 53%, and look at this. I really like him, he's a really nice guy. Okay, so let me tell you about my own personal experience. I have 5 projects in Puerto Princesa. 5 communities which were very, very poor. And I spent 1.5 million pesos. That's all, $30,000 on dolphin watching, on firefly watching, which by the way won gold in 2010, on snorkeling, on mangroves, and on rock climbing. Just look at my numbers. On the first year, 190,000 pesos. On the second year, 2 million pesos. I already got my money back. On the third year, 3 million pesos, double my investment. This Ugong Rock, you know how much the community is earning there now? 15,000 pesos a month. You know how much money they have in the bank? 400,000. Okay, that community, if the kids could go to elementary, that's good. If they go to high school, that's what they call hulog ng langit. Well, on the second year, this community is able to send their kids to college. And they didn't have to do it while destroying the environment. This Iwahig firefly, the bankeros there told me, Ma'am, hindi ko lang pinapaaral ang anak ko, ako ang nag-aaral. Okay, let me bring you to Kamsur, which went tourism. The malnutrition rate went down by 45%. From 39, they went to 10. Okay, it's a business and investment hub because of tourism. Okay, finally, let me tell you about the Lohas market. The Lohas market is the lifestyles of health and sustainability. And in 2008, when there was an economic squeeze and many companies went belly up and many people lost their jobs, guess what? According to the Natural Marketing Institute, this was the only market that was left unscathed, and in fact, it continues to increase by an exponential 23%. What's the Lohas market? Ecotourism, green building, personal health. Okay, what am I saying here? I am saying we are not Singapore, we're not Malaysia, we're not Hong Kong. We are 7,000 amazing, gorgeous, beautiful islands, and we can get our people out of poverty if we were to invest in our island ecosystems so that the people there can improve their quality of life by the care of the environment so that they will stop coming here and selling in the streets of EDSA or living in the esteros. Why don't we rather invest in our islands? Because that is what God gave us. Okay, in closing, I'm doing really well, 14 minutes. Okay, so in closing, I would like to show you this picture. That's the forested area in the country. That's a protected area. And that, ladies and gentlemen, are mining applications. That's why I get really scared because the poorest areas, oh, I need my glasses. Can I get my glasses? The poorest areas in the country are mining areas. Samar, Surigao, Benguet. So what track record does mining have to speak of anyway? So in closing, I need my glasses. Okay. Can I use your glasses, Arnold? Sorry. Second, I'm already 58 now. Okay. In closing, I would like to say, I'd like to read you this United Nations Declaration. And this just came this week. It says, the natural capital, which comprises Earth's natural assets, soil, air, water, flora, and fauna, and the ecosystem services amount to $3 trillion of US dollars. And according to the United Nations, despite being fundamental to our well-being, their daily use remains undetected within our economic system. Using natural capital this way is not sustainable. The private sector, as everyone else, should recognize the true cost of economic growth and sustaining human well-being today and into the future.
Thank you, Ms. Gina Lopez, for your insightful presentation. Our next speaker is the director, a member of the Board of Directors of the Chamber of Mines of the Philippines, the love of her life, the love of Gina Lopez's life, Mr. Jerry Bruno. Let's give him a big round of applause.
I hope my 15 minutes haven't started yet. I haven't started. Gina, I love you too. But the sad reality is that you don't really know what you're talking about. "15 minutes? 15 minutes. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. If you think this is too harsh, please listen to my presentation and tell me later if you think it's harsh. This paper is called Correcting Lies and Disinformation, and I should have put one more here, ignorance, but I didn't, sorry. We're here to talk about large-scale metallic mining, but first, let's look at the face of small-scale mining. This is what it looks like throughout the country. There are 43 billion pesos of gold sold to the central bank on a no-names basis from these sources. There is child labor, no environmental or safety programs, no rehabilitation, and no taxes. This is the hole that Mr. Mansod, who likes to talk about taxes, is looking for, because this is counted against the output of the mineral sector, and yet there are no taxes. So there's the hole. There's one more, but I don't have time to describe that. So why is the attack on the legitimate large-scale sector? Gina has just gone through her presentation. She hasn't mentioned any of this, and you have to ask yourself why. Okay, mining, I have to go very quickly, 15 minutes. Mining and food security, right? The mining footprint. Another big misconception. The map on the left from the Mines and Geosciences Bureau, all these yellow dots are application for exploration permits. So the likes of Gina and others will look at this and they will say, horror of horrors, the Philippines is all going to get mined out. But that is not true. Look at the map on the right, the large-scale metallic mines. I would have said there was 27 of them, that's all, but Director Hasarano said there's 31. Okay, so this is based on 27. We occupy 60,000 hectares or 0.2% of the total landmass of this country. 0.2%. So you might ask why. So many applications, so few mines. Why is that? Because if you look at the global statistics on mining, out of 25,000 prospects, 500 will be seriously explored and 1 will become a mine. That's how difficult it is to find a commercially viable deposit. Maybe in this country, the odds will be better. But even if we double the number of mines that we have here, we will occupy 0.4% of the total landmass of this country. So you don't have to be a scientist to know that if it is only 0.4%, can that possibly affect food and fish? Of course not. It stands to reason. So let's get rid of this. Mining is affecting food security and fish. And this very nice animal here, with this whatever it is on top, an open pit. Those are scare tactics, and they're meant to make you believe that if mining continues in this country, we're going to run out of food. And that's baloney. The same situation in Palawan, where this all started. Yep, Gina showed this. I'm showing it too. This has been badly misinterpreted. Because if you file an application for an exploration permit, whether it is in a protected area or not, it will get plotted. And then later on, the MGB will process it. And if it's a protected area, it'll be taken out. This has been misinterpreted. Look at the map on the right. There are only 3 large-scale nickel mines in southern Palawan. That's all. And look at a big protected area in the middle, Mount Mantiligahan. We can't mine there. So what's all the fuss about? If the fuss started because Palawan is all going to get mined out, that is a very big misconception. I'll tell you right now. As a matter of fact, there are many areas close to mining in the Philippines. Section 19 of the Mining Act, Director Hasarano mentioned that. Palawan has its own environmental law. There are areas close to mining, and then there's the NIPAS. Take a look at the NIPAS. All those red areas are protected areas. You can't touch them. And those areas in green, I suppose, are in the process of being protected. Typical mining areas on the issue of biodiversity and agriculture again. This is what Rio Tuba in Palawan looked like in the 1970s. Lateritic soil, full of iron and some nickel. You can't grow rice here. There's no forest here. Stunted trees and shrubs. That's what you get in this area. This is not a biodiverse or agricultural area. Barong nickel in Palawan, same thing. Look at those trees. They're stunted trees because of the lateritic condition of the soil. This is not agricultural land. Surigao Mineral Reservation. Yeah, Gina flew over this, I think, or was it Ted Filon? Look at how it looks like. You will see entire mountains in Surigao with no forest or trees. You want to know why? Because the laterite goes all the way to the surface. And when you scratch the surface, you will get red-looking soil. That's iron oxide. It's full of iron. This is not an agricultural area. This is not a forested area. The only thing you can do here is mine the laterite. That's the only thing you can do. Philex mining in Benguet. Cordilleras now. What do you see here? A logged out area. When the mining company came here, and I know about this for a fact, came here in the 1950s, there were no trees here because it was all logged out. And the road going to the mine was in fact a logging road. No biodiversity here. No agriculture here. Tampakan, a hot issue, right? I have been told that 65% of the area of Tampakan looks like this. It's been logged out. Or it's subject to slash and burn farming, kaingin, which is destructive, and yet nobody talks about this. I can show you more, but I don't have the time. Where is the biodiversity here? Where is the agriculture here? Well, there isn't any. Okay, Rio Tuba, Palawan, it's so topical. This is what the mine looked like. Horror of horrors, it were raping the land. But that's what Gina likes to say, right? But there's nothing else you can do here. This is the vegetation. It's stunted trees. You can't grow stuff here because of the laterite. The first thing to note is that mine rehabilitation is now a requirement. Any pictures that they show you of unrehabilitated mines of the past is irrelevant to the discussion on mining today because we have to rehabilitate. So the question is, how do we rehabilitate this? And I'd like to show you how we do it. I don't have the time. I'll just show you the outcome of our rehabilitation. The good thing about Rio Tuba, Gina's favorite mine, is that we've been mining for 30 years, and so the mined out areas have been subject to rehabilitation. This is what it looks like. May 2008, this was an open pit. September 2009, March 2011. We have rehabilitated 1/4 of our mining area. We've planted 500,000 trees, and in 1 year, we spent close to 60 million pesos on environmental expenses. This is what a rehabilitated mine-out area looks like in Rio Tuba. And there's the wildlife. And I can show you a lot more. I just don't have the time. And what we do is we plant fruit trees inside to encourage wildlife to come back. So talking about wildlife, I think you've seen this. Just a week or two ago, it came out in the Inquirer and the Star. You know why I show this? Because this was captured in Rio Tuba, of all places, right? And if Rio Tuba was toxic, if the waters were polluted and toxic, you would not get these people. Oh, sorry, these animals. Hey. 2 minutes. 2 minutes. 2 minute reprieve. Okay. Go to, please, excuse me, let me continue. Go to Gina's website, Safe Palawan Movement. You can Google it and you'll go to this. Look at this banner. Mining in Palawan is poisoning rare wildlife. And I'm covering this because I'll show it to you later. Okay, I'm just going to go very quickly. Mine rehabilitation in Zamboanga, before and after. Mine rehabilitation in Taganito, Surigao. Don't freak out when you see this, right? This is the only thing that you can do in these areas. There's nothing else you can do. Rehabilitation. Reforestation. The mining industry for the last 10 years have planted 15 million trees, long before the National Breeding Program. Every year we compete among ourselves to see how many, who plants the most. If you don't believe me, please go to the DNR or the MGB. They have the figures. That's a before and after picture of Felix. Okay. Mining and building human capital, sustainable social expenses. We are required to spend 1.5% now of our total operating costs. In 2010, the operating members of the chamber, and not all operating mines are members of the chamber, spent 370 million pesos in this. And where does it go? Infrastructure, livelihood, water projects, training, medical care. I can only skim through this, that's all I can do. And schools. The mining industry educates thousands of students a year. And we don't have to build our own schools. We can also do this, a DepEd accredited Adopt a School program. Indigenous peoples, my favorite topic. Director Hasarano mentioned about the IPRA. Well, we all have to comply. In 2010, those of us operating in ancestral lands paid 200 million pesos in royalties to IPs. These are the most marginalized sector of our society. And for the first time in their lives, they have some money. Why? Because of the mining company or the mining industry. Interesting fact in Rio Tuba, there are 13,000 members of the Palawan tribe around us. They don't have ancestral land or ancestral title, but we still treat them as if they do. This is where they live. And we gave them the option to go to this, Gawakalinga housing. And they said yes. And we've built 6 clusters of 210 housing units so far. And we're committed to finish 1,000 homes. And apart from that, they get medical care, livelihood, indigenous learning system. We educate in Rio Tuba 800 IP kids and adults. And who does that? Government? The NGOs? China? No, it's a mining company that does this. You really must give me some allowance here. Let's go back to this banner, Gina's website. I'm now going to take out what this shows. There it is. Mining is killing indigenous peoples and poisoning rare wildlife. Is that civil? Is that a civil discourse from a civil society group? And yet they go around and talk to kids and show these things. And they also use the IPs to their own advantage. She is one member of the Palawan tribe. Look at what she gets from us. I won't read this anymore, but she's also used by them in their anti-mining sorties. And in fact, they've even used her much more than this. I just don't have the time to explain it to you, but if you ask me later, I will. On the issue of poverty, have you seen these ads? What does this say? I can't even read it from here. It's got to do with poverty in mining areas. But this is misconstrued because this includes small-scale areas where there are hundreds of thousands of people, right? This is not the legitimate large-scale sector. Here's another one here. Undermining lives. Fact is, there is no mining site in the country that shows economic development in the lives of the people. Another one. Government only receives crumbs from mining. This is December 22. Here we go. The host community of Rio Tuba, Batarasa, still remains to be one of the poorest municipalities in Palawan. I will disprove that. But before I do, here we go. They bring up Sendong. So now we're responsible for the catastrophe of Sendong. That's not true. Said Mr. Monsod, while only very few men get rich from the mines, it sounds like crab mentality to me, here we now see how most of our countrymen suffer from the rape that has been committed against our environment and biodiversity. But that is disinformation. There are no large-scale mines here. All right? Okay, is Batarasa poor? Let's settle this once and for all. There are 23 municipalities in Palawan. Batarasa is one of them. In 2010, Batarasa was second in income, second in equity, third in cash balances, and fourth in assets. Out of 23 municipalities. Is that a poor municipality? Is that a poor municipality? Cannot be, right? That's what it looks like. Look at the transformation from the 1970s to today. I invite all the members of these associations to come with me to Rio Tuba and let's settle this issue once and for all. It's not hard to understand why. This is what a large mine can do. Here's Rio Tuba, the mine, Coral Bay, the processing plant, combined personnel of 4,200, including contractors, right? Easily, multiplier effect of five times. Easily, average household of 5, that's a lot of people. Combined payroll in 1 year, 595 million pesos. Combined social expenditures, almost 200 million in social expenditures in Batarasa. Combined Palawan-based, not national, taxes and fees, 160 million pesos. All of this is almost all disposable income. You know why? Because this is what the employees get. Free housing, free medical care, free education, college scholarships, bonuses, etc. This is where they live. You want to see what this looked like in the 1970s? That's what Rio Tuba looked like in the 1970s. Okay? We need to develop our country as quickly as we can. This is still a very poor country. Yes, we need this, but we also need this. These are not mutually exclusive. Right? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Jerry Brimo, for your well-rounded overview. It seems that the heat is on. We seem to have a lover's quarrel here. Our next speaker is an international expert on conservation and development. Please welcome Mr. Clive Wicks. Let's give him a round of applause.
Good afternoon, everybody. This looks like walking into the lion's den. My name is Clive Wicks. I'm a conservation and development consultant, and I'm the partner of Dr. Robert Goodland, who is a world-famous environmental scientist, and we work together and produce this book, Philippines, Mining or Food, which you can get on the web. If you want to rubbish me, that's fine. I wouldn't try to rubbish Dr. Goodland because he was the senior environmental advisor to the World Bank, and he was the technical director of the Extractive Industry Review. Is this working? No, it's not working. Since we've been working here in the last 5 years, we've had 11 of the people working with us murdered. And I myself apparently am targeted now. I'm being guarded when I go to Davao by armed men the entire time. I would make the point that I don't understand what's going on. I'm not blaming the mining companies, but all this killing of people has got to stop. Armin Marin was a fellow with me in WWF, who I worked for 20 years. He's a father of 5, the same as I am. I would like to first of all congratulate the President, because Dr. Goodland and I think there is a desperate need to review the mining industry in the country. We also like to congratulate him on EO number 23, which is badly needed, and his wish to have total economic valuation, vital to protect natural capital. England and the Philippines are a little bit similar. We look alike, but you're much bigger, really. We have a group there called the Working Group on Mining in the Philippines. We're all sorts of different people, including people who know about mining and people who know about finance. We're also members of CPRISE, which is the IUCN Committee on Environment and Social Policy, and we have 106 members there who work on mining around the world. And as my contribution to that, I went to Russia, to the Russian Arctic, to look at a nickel mine, and I was totally appalled. The mine had been a prison for Stalin's prisoners. As we got close to the mine, about 25 miles away, the forest was totally destroyed by the fumes from the mine plant. We met the deputy manager of the company, who told us that people were dying like flies having worked in the mine, and that the London Nickel Exchange had told him that they would not sell his nickel unless it was sorted out. So they were trying to sort out the damage. But thousands and thousands of hectares of forest were destroyed simply by the fumes from the mine. In 2000, I attended the G8 meeting in Prague, representing WWF, and I wanted to show the impact of mining. So I made a map with UNEP of the mines in the island of New Guinea, and we were appalled by them. We looked at Grasberg, which is one of the biggest mines in the world, where they were throwing 400,000 tons of toxic waste into the rivers every day, until the Indonesian Minister for Environment reduced it to 200,000. We looked at Oktedi, which has a terrible reputation, Pogara, Paganini, and let's tell you something, none of them have tailings dams because all the tailings dams they made collapsed. They're all throwing it simply into the environment. So when you talk about how good the big companies are, I question it. I want to introduce induced seismic activity to you. You may not know what it is, but big mines close to seismic areas can cause terrible problems. Let's start with the Three Gorges Dam. There's nothing to do with mining, but there was no seismic activity until the dams were built. Now the Chinese are worried that seismic activity will destroy the Three Gorges Dam. Then let's look at the gas drilling in Indonesia, which resulted in a massive amount of toxic mud coming up, and they couldn't stop it. In my country, they started hydrofracturing for gas near to a town called Blackpool, and they started seismic activity. I'll be mentioning this as we go along. One of the biggest problems in the Philippines is your forests have been destroyed. And if you look at the cumulative risk in the Philippines, you've got mountains, you've got loss of forest cover, you've got climate change, you've now got the Sendong, for example, areas in Mindanao which were free of typhoons now have them. You've got high rainfalls, typhoons, you've got seismic activity, you've got fault lines. You want to put open-cast mines in the middle of that? Then watch out. You may get induced seismic activity, and you won't know the level of that seismic activity until it happens. The cumulative risks make mining in the Philippines very dangerous. The big thing here is, our worry is that the miners aren't working with the Agriculture Department. We went to see the Secretary of Agriculture to be horrified to find that mining applications go ahead and mines go ahead with no discussions with the Agricultural Department. Why is that? I have 25 years of agriculture, 75 years old, I've done a lot of things. 25 years of agriculture plus 27 years of the environmental movement. Philippines' target is to feed itself with rice by 2013, and then to feed an estimated population of 130 by 2030. The threats are from climate change, threat to water catchments, from mining and forest destruction, threat of biofuel production taking over agricultural land. We have a slight problem with DNR. Nowhere in the world do we see the same functions being done by the same department. They have to protect the environment, but they have to promote mining, oil, gas, and logging programs. We don't know any other country in the world that does this. One of the big problems seems to be an absence of strategic planning, and we actually work with governments. Because of our age, we're a bit respected, so we can work with ministers and prime ministers and presidents and so on. And we promote sustainable development through strategic environmental assessments. I haven't got time to go in it today. In 2006, we came out and we brought with us Claire Short, who was the Secretary of State for International Development for the British government. A Secretary of State is bigger than a minister, and she was absolutely appalled because we went to a place called Midsalip in Zamboanga del Sur, and those mountains there are going to be knocked down by miners, and the whole of the mountain, to get at the iron ore underneath, will be deposited on the rice fields. So the result of that was Claire Short lost her temper, and Mr. Amoldius was present when she did it, and she said, "I have never seen anything as systematically destructive as the miners program in the Philippines. The environment effects are," I can't read it from here, sorry, problem of getting old. "The environment effects are catastrophic, as are the effects on people's livelihood." We wrote the first book in 2007, and then I decided to upgrade the team and brought Dr. Goodland back with me, and that's when we wrote the book Mining or Food. This is actually a shot of the same place but another area within Midsalip. Again, they want to knock the mountains down and put them on the rice paddies. I work on oil and gas, and this is for 7 countries in West Africa. In the second report, she's even tougher than the first one. She blames the Philippine government for failing to maintain the health of its agriculture sector and to conserve its vital natural resources. This is what Zamboanga looked like when we got there, and I accept that these are only applications. But applications should not be made in areas which the government need for agriculture or for water catchments. All those areas should be identified through strategic planning and put into the program to start with. I am the mapper in the team. Dr. Goodland is the writer, and he's a very good writer, and I'm a very poor writer. My daughter says I shouldn't write because I can't spell. This map is the same place. Rather than overload one map with information, all these fields, yellow ones, are agricultural land. These are actually plantations. These are fish ponds along the river. And this is near the Sugarloaf Mountain. This is what was proposed for the mining industry. This is why the minister gets so upset. This is the same area with the mountains in the background, very high yielding rice. Oh, by the way, the mayor of Midsalip earns the same salary as the mayor of Manila. Surprise, surprise, she supports these mining applications. This is the island of Subayan, where my colleague was murdered. Look at this. These are the agricultural lands around the side. This is Mount Gitting, the protected area, and these were all mining applications over the top of agriculture and right in the middle of the national park as well. Theoretically illegal. What is happening? Right, we're going to go to the Tamparkan project. Dr. Goodwin and I have been all around the Tamparkan project. We are absolutely shocked that any mining company was allowed to go in those mountains. It's one of the riskiest projects we've ever seen anywhere in the world, and I speed read, so I undertook to look at the project at very high speed. I couldn't see anywhere for a whole day where anybody admitted the danger of the mine until I got an appendix by the consulting waste management engineers. And this is what they said. The mine has a high potential for loss of life and high environmental damage if the facilities fail. I've actually written dams or waste rock storage facilities occurs. Dr. Goodwin and I totally agree with that. However, we totally disagree that the mining company can guarantee to design facilities to avoid a disaster in perpetuity. That's forever. It's right up in the top of the mountain. Sorry, I'm losing it. It's a vitally important water catchment area. This is the Coronadal Valley. It's got 200,000 hectares of irrigated rice. These are plantations, the brine ones. It's an area with 6 rivers. And the Coronadal Valley, the SIA claimed that most of the water was coming from Mount Matutum. We often use independent reports, and we use the DNR report of 2003. This shows where the water is coming from. Underneath that valley are shallow aquifers, only 30 to 100 meters deep. Any pollution in them, you cannot clear them up, and that's the end of agriculture in that area. Let's summarize the risk as we see it. Leo mentioned that you're not supposed to be an old-growth forest. Well, the mine site itself will be an old-growth forest. So it will damage water supplies, shallow aquifers, agricultural land, fish ponds, possibly Lake Bulawan, and possibly down to the sea. It will also increase the risk of flooding. They want to store, which we find totally unacceptable, 2 billion tons of toxic mine waste in the water catchment area. And they will leave a mine void 800 meters deep, covering 500 hectares, with thousands of gallons of toxic water in the water catchment of 6 River. The Mal River will be the worst river affected. They're actually going to destroy. This is a controversial issue, This is a controversial issue. We said the toxic mine waste is associated with high levels of cancer to communities nearby. SMI questioned that. I went back to Dr. Gooden. He said, tell them to read the web. You will see where it is. It's a highly unstable area with high seismic activities right beside Mount Matutum. You start using thousands of tons, and I quite happen to know a lot about explosives, near to a active volcano, which is what Mount Tutu is, you may end up with massive seismic activity, and who's going to take the risk with that? It's also a conflict zone with 4 militant groups against the rules of ICMM and EIR recommendations. I'm not going to do all the rest of it, but a lot of laws have been broken. This shows you the fault lines going through. This map shows you even more faults in the area. This is high-altitude tropical rainforests. They're going to destroy 40% of 2,200 hectares of tropical rainforests. They're going to have old-growth forest exactly where the mine pit is, and the total destruction of forest is going to be nearly 4,000 hectares. What is that as a contribution to sustainability? I want to show you this. These rivers are all the catchment for the Mal River. They are all going to disappear under here. This is what they're going to do. They're going to have the 2 dams. One will be fresh water, which will be this one, and this one's the second one. This dam is 0.8 of a kilometer long, and it's 150 meters high. That one is 2.1 kilometers long, and it's 280 meters high. Can I remind you what I said about Three Gorges Dam? A massive dam full of toxic waste sitting at the top of the mountain, right above the Mal River, and that is why Bernie Lopez, who's here, has made the film The Killer Dam. this is the situation of the Lamal River. And here is the National Irrigation Dam. Again, no consultation with the Department of Agriculture, no consultation with the National Irrigation Authority, and they tell me that they actually formally complained about this. So this is nothing to do with Tam Parsons. The question is it responsible to fail to consult the Secretary of the Department, Secretary of Agriculture, and so on? You can see that. I'll have to go to the end now. I'll go to the last page. Right, so what we're trying to do is emphasize mining and food security, lack of departmental coordination, responsible mining plans. We haven't seen any responsible mining plans on the new mining plans that are available at present. Environmental impacted areas, rivers, aquifers, forests, marine, Tampakan, potentially one of the most dangerous mines in the world. Cumulative risk and impacts, use strategic environment assessments to assess what they are. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wiggs, for your knowledgeable contribution to the subject matter. Now, from one foreigner, we go to another foreigner, but this time he's married to a Filipina for the past 20-plus years. The next speaker is the chair and president of the Wallace Business Forum. Please welcome Mr. Peter Wallace. A round of applause.
Thanks, Grace. I'm not used to holding a microphone like this. Normally that's for people who are singing. My wife has said she'll divorce me if I ever try to sing. So I'm going to try and speak. Mr. Wicks had a book called Mining or Food. Can I suggest he change the title to Mining and Food? We can do both. I also wrote a book. It's called Moving Forward, and it's the advantages of having mining to help the community and the country. A CV of an environmentalist, a CV of someone who cares for this country, a CV of someone, an Australian, who was living in Australia, studied in England, and next month will come back to the Philippines to help clean up the environment in the Philippines. That is my daughter. She cares about the environment, and I'm very proud of her, and so do I. But I believe there is a fundamental we must address, and it is the fundamental that is at the heart of this entirely. You must have mining. It is just impossible to live without mines, and you cannot say, do it somewhere else. That is very un-Christian. Your national hero 150 years ago said, our country can move forward and be a great country if we take the metals from the ground and use them. Your hero. Your church said the same thing. Your God said, dig the copper out of the hills. The answer, I believe, is to control mining. Banning anything never works. Try playing wetting sometime. But you must do the least possible damage. You must support the local community, rehabilitate the land, both during mining and at the end of it. There's a role that everyone can take here. And I would like to see those who oppose mining, including the church, to take a role in helping to control mining. Government has proved inept at it. That doesn't mean we should just stop because the government can't do its job. We should help the government to do its job. We should help the government to control. I won't show you, you know all this. We have to have mining. Every facet of our lives. We use minerals in everything we do. Do we want to go naked in the world? We will if we don't mine. Will the church have to close down because it no longer has a gold pewter for the wine? Look what's happened to us over the last 20 years because we didn't have mining. Not only because we didn't have mining, other things too. But mining was a major contributor to this. Like every other country in Asia saw a decline in poverty. We did not. We are a very rich country. We have tremendous resources that can be used. And you can see we have not done so. Our economy grew at about 5.5%, 5% over the last few years. Just Tampakan, which Mr. Wicks is so critical of, if it does come into operation, can add 1 whole percentage point to our GDP. We go from 5.5 to 6.5. We have 2 possible scenarios. Everything works. Mining gets going. Government does its job. The opposition helps us to control it. And the investors put real money in. What happens? We have at least 100,000 more jobs. We have roads, schools, hospitals built that government can't afford to do and hasn't done. We bring electricity and water into local communities. Our GDP grows at 7 or 8%, and we break the poverty trap, because until we get over 7%, we will remain in poverty. Or we can do the opposite. We can have a government that doesn't do its job. We can have oppositors that succeed in stopping mining, in blocking us from doing it. What happens then? Everything goes illegal. Wetting still exists illegally. You can't stop it. So it goes small scale where there'll be no control, where people don't act responsibly, and we do get all the pollution that Mr. Wicks is talking about. Today, yes, you're right. In the past, there was irresponsible mining by big miners. That's not allowed anymore, and it doesn't happen anymore. We don't get the jobs. We have disastrous mining practices, and the economy runs at about 3.5% instead of 7 or 8. A huge differential. This is why it's good. We get capital, revenue generation through taxes. I know there's a lot of talk about we don't get enough taxes from mining. I'll show you some figures if I have time that we do. But the trouble is people don't take into account all the bits and pieces that contribute, because part of the mining of the taxes is building schools, building hospitals. That's something government can't afford to do. It's a direct way of giving money to the government by doing their job. We improve the quality of life in rural areas. You think we don't? When my wife went to school in Baguio, she went to St. Teresa's, which is not exactly a poor school. Every morning, 2 busloads of children from Philex and Benguet would arrive at the school to go to school. They weren't coming from any other villages, just those where the 2 mines were, because the wealth was there to afford to bring them to that school. They do support the environment. Today's modern mines have no choice, and I'm glad they don't. We have a very good mining law, one of the world's best, and it can operate very well. We don't need it changed. It's fine as it is. It just needs to be implemented properly. The trouble is that all of this, small-scale miners don't do. The irresponsible ones, the ones that are causing all the problem. We have the lowest level of wealth in a couple of countries around here that are also heavily into mining. They're into mining successfully, we're not, and we have the lowest GDP per capita of those 3. And you can see that we have the lowest percentage of contribution to the economy of those 3. We have some $840 billion worth of resources in the ground, and we hardly have any impact on the world because of it. Saudi Arabia has oil, and it's one of the richest countries in the world today, not because they work hard, but because they sell their oil. We have huge amounts of gold and copper in the ground, and we're poor because we don't. In the 70s, when I first came here, and the reason I came here was to build a factory to support mining, 24% growth. We were 24% of the exports of the country, and we're now down to 5%. If we'd stayed at 24%, held up with mining, we would be considerably richer by at least $9 billion in exports instead of only 2. And you can see there the decline that has happened. Employment, we have about 340,000 if you count both metallic and non-metallic. And you add all the others that support that, and it's, as far as we can tell, somewhere in the region of about 2 million people in all the indirect areas that are tied in to mining. But this I find particularly interesting. We talk about farmers, we talk about land use. Well, a farmer averages income 260 pesos a day, a miner 550 pesos a day. But there are 4 persons per hectare in a mine, there's 1 person per hectare on a farm. So the income per hectare, per farmer, 2,200 versus 260, 5 times the differential. Using land for mining gets you far more wealth than if you put rice on it. This is the areas where rice is, and we've seen some of these before. There is no mines in any of those areas. You can have, and I agree with Mr. Wicks and I agree with Gina, you can have control that you don't put a mine in virgin forests on agricultural land. You do give biodiversity the preference. There's plenty of other places to do the mining. But as you've seen from what Jerry said, the places where they have mines, you couldn't grow anything anyway. We estimate that about 44% of the net income from a company, a mining company, goes to the government in one way or another. This is TVI, one of the well-run, responsible mining companies, and they paid $1.2 billion in taxes and fees and other things to the government. And is it a poor community? No. It was class 4 when they came in, it's class 1 today. So it is definitely not a poor community. And should we get more taxes? There's talk today we should increase the tax revenue to government. Well, if we do, look what happens. We're already the highest amongst the various regions that are in mining. If we make it even higher, we won't get the investment, we won't get the mines. Maybe that's the intention. You look at the Philippines and Indonesia, already we're paying a much higher excise tax than there. So if we double that, we make us even more uncompetitive to a successful country like Indonesia. The Tampakan project, all right, does it have all those problems that Mr. Wicks said? I'd like to hear the other side. I would like to hear what Tampakan has to say in answer to those allegations of his, because I don't believe that an Australian major company would take the kind of risks that he is talking about. They wouldn't have... Xstrata has a reputation worldwide that it would not risk to do something like that. So I'm very surprised to hear what he had to say. Last year, we had $870 million of foreign investment as up to end of November. $870 million. Tampakan is $6 billion, one company. 7 times just all of our foreign investment last year. It's huge. It dramatically changes. As I said, 1 percentage point more on GDP just by this one mine. And it only takes up a very small footprint of the total of the Philippines. It will bring into the government $15 billion pesos a year. That's a significant amount of taxes. Create jobs and help the local villages, the local community with money going into those areas. The Fraser Institute did a study, a report on mining around the world. We ranked, as we do in so many other things, at the bottom, 88 out of 93 countries. But if government was doing its job properly, decently, we would be in the top 10. So we have to get government to operate properly. So I say it again, responsible mining, don't ban mining. We need regulate some of the changes I suggest. Number one, put small-scale mining under national control. We can't rely on the LGUs to do it. It's much too risky. So that we can ensure they do act responsibly, they don't use mercury, they do pay taxes, they do sell the gold to the central bank as they must, and they don't illegally export. Secondly, strengthen the DNR and MGB. They are woefully inadequately funded. They need far more money. They need better personnel. Not that there's something wrong with the personnel, Leo, but they don't have enough of them. They don't have enough of the professionals to do the job. And local laws can't be allowed to override national law. That is just can't. The Constitution doesn't allow it. And I'm very surprised that the government has not stepped in and already overridden that local law to ban open-pit mining. That looks like I've finished ahead of time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wallace, for a well-focused topic. Our next speaker is the consultant of Manila Electric Company. Please welcome Christian Monsod. A round of applause.
I don't have a PowerPoint, so you can just look at me. Good afternoon. The mineral wealth of our country, as the mining industry reminds us, is staggering. Its potential to contribute to a country's development cannot be discounted or ignored. While mining has never been a driver of our development, not even during the mining boom of the 70s, we are here to find out if there is a way to realize that potential. And I thank the organizers of this conference for taking this step towards that objective. The real question before us today is, should mining be allowed in the Philippines? I'll get straight to the point. I believe that we should be open to that proposition, provided four minimum conditions are met. Number one, the environmental, social, and economic costs are accounted for in evaluating mining projects. Number two, the country gets a full and fair share of the value of the extracted minerals. Number three, and this is addressed to the government, the institutional capabilities of the government to evaluate and regulate mining activities are put in place. And number four, since mining uses up non-renewable natural capital, the money from mining are specifically used to create new capital, such as developed human resources and infrastructure, particularly in the rural areas. I refer you to the paper of Professor Ronald Mendoza of the AIM and his proposal for a middle ground that involves the establishment of an inclusive growth trust fund. With respect to downstream plants and the total banning of ore exports, I did not include those because the mining industry has a point on the practicality and long-term feasibility of these conditions, and hence the need for more consultations. I submit that mining is a social justice issue, and we cannot discuss it except in the context of our country's dismal performance in addressing mass poverty and the gross inequalities of income, wealth, and political power that persist more than 25 years after the glowing promise of EDSA of a just society. We are all familiar with the facts. Over 24 million Filipinos are poor. Poor meaning per capita income of less than 46 pesos a day, price of your coffee. And about 9.4 million of them are food poor, those who live on 32 pesos a day. Not even enough to meet the minimum 2,000 calories a day. Over 24 years, our real per capita income rose only 20%, while those of our neighbors increased. Malaysia 400%, Thailand 500%, China 1,100%. In the process, eradicating absolute poverty. Even more compelling, inequality of income has not changed since EDSA. The top 1% of the families, numbering 185,000, all of us in this room, have an income equal to the income of the bottom 30% of the families, numbering 5.5 million. There are many more data, but this is not the forum for them. I just wanted to make the point that history has not been very kind to our poor, and we know that must change. The increasing inequality is, of course, worldwide. In our particular case, the root of the problem is a development paradigm followed by every administration, that rising waters raise all boats, that sustained economic growth driven by investments still will eliminate poverty. But conclusive empirical data tell us that sustained high growth is not possible unless we also address the problem of inequality. And that means not only income reform, quality education, healthcare, and livelihood, but also asset reform, which is primarily about land and natural resources, and a substantive redistribution of their benefits and costs. As you know, we have 4 of those programs: agrarian reform, urban land reform and enhancing, ancestral domain, and fisheries. It is unfortunate that the stakeholders on the issue of mining, like the National Commission on Indigenous Peoples and the Department of Agriculture, have no voice on this stage. Environmental, social, economic costs and benefits. Mining activities are usually located in rural and mountain areas and can affect farmlands, rivers, shorelines, where the poorest of the poor are located, namely farmers, indigenous peoples, and municipal fishermen. The fact is that mining cannot be conducted without affecting the land, water, and air surrounding the site, as well as the various natural resources found in them. Mining involves extraction of minerals, but may also involve the use or destruction of non-mineral resources such as fresh water, timber, and wildlife. This may also result in health problems, displacement of people, social divisiveness, even the need to provide PNP and AFP protection to mining companies. Then there are the disasters that can happen from the cutting of the trees, from siltation and erosion, and accidents from mining structures. All these translate into public costs. That is why mining and logging are often cited as an example of what Paul Krugman calls activities that privatize benefits and socialize costs. This is the social justice issue in mining. As for the argument that minerals are meant to serve humanity and are the raw materials for modern conveniences, I agree. But the point is that in cases where mining is allowed, the minerals should be priced at full cost, including environmental, social, and economic costs. Otherwise, our poor, who mainly bear these costs, would be subsidizing the consumerism of the rich, both domestic and foreign. We cannot find answers to the plight of the poor until we listen to the poor. You might therefore want to read 3 public documents: the National Rural Congress of CBCP in 2007, the Climate Change National Consultations of 2009, and the Summit on Poverty, Inequality, and Social Reform in October to December 2011. Why climate change? Because the new normal arising from climate change requires a watershed approach to mitigation, adaptation, and disaster management. And watersheds are where the forests and the minerals are mostly located. In these 3 conferences, one of the deepest concerns of the poor are the environmental, social, and economic costs of mining. What are the real contributions of mining to GDP, exports, employment, government revenues, investment, industrialization, poverty alleviation? Here are some statistics. As an average contribution to GDP, 0.91, less than 1%. Average share to total employment, 3.76, one-third of 1%. Average contribution of metallic mining to total exports, 2.96%. Average share of mining in investments to total investments, 2.5%. Total government taxes, fees and royalties from 1997 to 2010, 64 billion, 7.6% of total production value of mining companies of 842 billion. On industrialization, per former NEDA Secretary Cielito Abito, based on national input-output tables, backward linkages of mining, 0.46, less than half of other industries. Forward linkages is a low 0.82. He concludes, this means that mining is not considered enough of a value-adding activity. On poverty alleviation, mining has the highest poverty incidence of any sector in the country, 48.7%. The only sector where poverty incidence increased between 1988 to 2009. The high poverty incidence in areas such as Caraga, Zamboanga Peninsula, Bicol, are about 40-45%, where the national average is 26. We talked about Batarasa. Yes, it's true, poverty incidence is 53%. The mining industry is correct in pointing out that the statistics do not establish causality. I agree with that. But the data at least shows an association between mining and poverty that raises questions on the claim that mining improves the quality of life in its community. Investment and export proceeds. The mining industry's absolute figures on gross investment inflows and export proceeds are impressive. They are only half the picture. Mining companies are allowed to recover and repatriate all pre-operating and development costs up to 4 to 5 years after start of operations. Thus, the inflows and outflows on investment may even out during the period. On export proceeds, mining operations usually front-load production during the first 5 years, understandably to exploit market opportunities. But this also happens to coincide with their tax holidays. Profit remittances can thus be considerable. The DNR says there is a discrepancy between potential excise tax from mining and actual collections, 7.8 billion from 2000 to 2009. Large-scale mining claims, and I think it's true, that their payments in 2008 and 2009 equaled the collectible amount, and that the uncollected excise taxes are attributable solely to small-scale miners and quarrying. That may be true, 2008, 2009. But it's interesting that if one takes a longer view, from 1997 to 2007, there is no such correlation. Actual collections for 6 out of the 11 years are lower than the collectibles from large-scale mining, ranging from 4% to 36%. It is unfortunate that small-scale mining sector was not invited to speak at this conference, so it can justify its role in the development of the mining industry. After all, the production value of small-scale mining from 1997 to 2010 was the same as that of large-scale mining at about 300 billion. Employment. The mining industry claims that one direct job in mining creates 5 more jobs in the rest of the economy, or a multiple of 5. NEDA denies that there's such data. However, there is a study by Ms. Madeleine Dumaus based on the 2000 input-output tables of the economy, which shows that, 1, a peso change in the final demand for mining and quarrying generates 1 peso and 70 centavos worth of additional output for the economy. On employment, every 1 million of additional investment in mining and quarrying generates additional employment of 2.2, not 5. The average multiplier of 2.2 jobs includes small scale, which requires virtually no capital investment on the one hand. On the other hand, capital-intensive large-scale mining, like Tampakan, that will generate 10,000 temporary jobs and 2,000 permanent jobs with a 5.9 billion investment. That adds up to 120 million per permanent job. The mineral extractive industry is considered worldwide as a low job generating activity. This data put in question the expansive claim by the Chamber that the projected large-scale mining 15 billion investment will generate 70,000 direct jobs that will result in 350,000 other jobs, leading to 2,050,000 jobs by 2018, with 10.25 million Filipinos as direct beneficiaries of mining. A recalculation would look more like 576,000 Filipino beneficiaries. The share of government in mining revenues. The Chamber is objecting to the proposed royalty of 5% on mining activities, that it would drive investors to more favorable financial regimes. The industry in November 2011 appealed to the government not to increase the royalties because the, quote, current fiscal regime may be the only thing that's keeping the industry afloat. At the same time, the market is at new highs, and the newspapers banner unprecedented mining profits in some companies. To summarize the issue of revenue sharing, very little by way of job generation, little net foreign exchange, relatively small contribution to GDP, very little industrialization, and let me just move on. Wow. The government admits that the Philippine Development Plan, that there is no standard resource and environmental valuation. There is no cost-benefit analysis. The government admits there is no resource advantage. And here NIPAS was mentioned. The government admits that environmental laws, policies, and so on are not and are poorly implemented. Let me just talk later.
Thank you, Attorney Monsod, for your incisive understanding of the businesses of environment. So, from one Wharton graduate, we now go to another Wharton graduate. Our last guest speaker, may I now call on the Chair of Philex Mining Corporation, Mr. Manny Pangilinan. Let's give him a warm applause.
Good afternoon. I'd like, first of all, to thank the organizers of this conference, PHINEX, MAP, and PCCI. And of course, I'm grateful for the opportunity to share my thoughts with you. My task this afternoon is not to add more fuel to the fire, but to summarize broadly the position of the industry. So I speak today with this paramount question. It's not really whether or not we should do mining, which is rather negative, but how can we make mining work for our country? So let me begin by asking who in this ballroom does not have a cell phone? Yeah, sorry I'm not giving free cell phones today. Well, in a way, Peter's alluded to it, the average cell phone contains about 24 milligrams of gold, 250 milligrams of silver, 3,800 milligrams of cobalt, and 9 milligrams of palladium. Since the cellular industry started in this country sometime in the late 90s, we've imported more than 200 million cell phones. But as with cell phones, mining touches most aspects of our daily life. When you build your home, there's cement, there's iron bars, aluminum. When you use your laptops, take your car to work, or when you use the microphone to protest against mining. Clearly, we cannot live without mining. So I've been asked, why did we invest in mining in this country? So let me give you the broad context. We all know that rapid economic development in emerging markets has led to rising demand for resources, for fuel, food, minerals, and even water. We've never before seen growth in income of such speed and magnitude, and that's concentrated in Asia, in China, and India, which are doubling their per capita income at about 10 times the pace which England achieved during the Industrial Revolution. Both countries are adding floor space every year at 3 times the entire residential and commercial square footage of the city of Chicago. And in the coming decades, according to McKinsey, up to 3 billion people and their spending power will be added to the global middle class. The world is indeed entering an era of sustained resource demand and high resource prices. So the question for us Filipinos must be, does the Philippines have the capacity to supply some of these resources and take advantage of those prices for our people? Is it reasonable to stop developing our resources knowing the world and this country need them? I think the answer is obvious to the first question. Peter pointed out that we're one of the most mineralized countries in the world, second or third in gold, third or fourth in copper. As to the second question, if we choose not to participate in the global supply chain for minerals, either by outright ban or moratorium, our need for mining products will not stop. So our only recourse would be to import. We would then pay for the foreign exporter's cost of production and profit and the cost of protecting his own environment. This is not common sense. Why should we pay somebody else to do the job we ought to be doing? Then let's talk about alternatives to the use of mineral land. Tourism is one. However, most mining sites are not ideal for tourism. I think Jerry's pointed that out. Our mines in Patcala and Surigao are hardly suitable for tourism, if you've been there, simply because they don't have the features of an attractive tourist site. There's nothing to see in Patcal, there's nothing to see in Silangan or in Surigao. And even if tourism were possible, we must ask, are the expected returns from tourism comparable to the benefits which mining can provide? The other suggested land use is agriculture. I'm a believer in the potential and need for agriculture in this country, and I consider the imperative of feeding ourselves as an urgent national priority. There's no doubt about that. But again, most mines are situated in areas that are inhospitable to agriculture. The land is often too steep, too arid, or too mineralized for agriculture to prosper. Related to this, there's an attempt to introduce the new concept of total economic value, or TEV, in assessing mining opportunities. The thrust of TEV is to measure environmental hazards and social costs in calculating gains and losses from mining projects. The goal is commendable, and I agree. But the calculus of the value is intangible, elusive, and extremely subjective. How does one quantify and test the value attached to the beauty of a sunset, the feel of early morning mist, or the music of water rippling through a stream? Please don't get me wrong. I value the beauty of nature as much as all of you do. All I ask is for some objective and tangible standard by which tourism, agriculture, and mining can be evaluated. In fact, for mining, that standard is already in place. Mining projects require an environmental compliance certificate and a feasibility study, which together quantify the potential benefits to all stakeholders, especially the community and the government, along with the environmental impact. Our country has enough laws to address concerns in most areas of our lives. This is true for mining. The problem has always been, as we all know, enforcement and implementation of these laws. I admit that our industry is not perfect and could benefit from improvements. Unfortunate accidents have happened even to large mines. But the mistakes of a few should not be construed that the whole is wrong, any more than one car accident, one plane crash, or one oil spill should shut down an entire industry. When we invested in PLDT in 1998, that company was not in pretty good shape. We did not tell you that it will take us 2 years to fix the company and tell you at the same time that, sorry, for the next 2 years, we cannot provide you telephone service. So let me briefly discuss some of our thoughts. I think broadly, in fact, what Christian has alluded to earlier. First, health-related and safety concerns, exploitation of women and child workers, the absence of livelihood plans and post-mining rehabs are issues brought about in large part by small-scale and illegal miners. They operate freely and thrive without being subjected to the regulations and sanctions imposed on large-scale mining. The solution is obvious, is to subject small-scale mining to the same regulations and standards for large-scale mining. Correlatively, national and local policies on mining need to be harmonized, and the best case here is Tampakan, and the cooperation of the LGUs in their enforcement must be procured. Second, the institutional capacity of our regulators must be improved, particularly with respect to equipment and quantity and quality of regulatory staff. By the way, that's true for mining, that is true for the Category 2 in the airline industry. For example, in Surigao del Norte, there are only 9 mining engineers and 1 geologist to oversee mining activities in the province, which include 3 major mining projects, several exploration projects, 18 approved small-scale mining permits, and more than 1,000 illegal small-scale miners. The private sector should help government raise its supervisory capabilities through funding of scholarships and training here and abroad, procurement of equipment, and the hiring of the requisite personnel. Part of the funding could come by way of a fee on mining companies, akin to the supervisory and regulatory fee payable by telecoms companies to the NTC. Our industry must learn to accept that proper regulatory attention will provide the comfort to all stakeholders and critics that responsible mining is possible in our country as it has been and still is in other countries like Australia, South Africa, Canada, Sweden, and even Indonesia. Third, creating an independent environmental commission responsible for supervising and enforcing environmental concerns. At present, both the EMB and the MGB are agencies under the DENR. MGB is charged with the protection, development, and supervision of mining. EMB's mandate, on the other hand, is to enforce environmental laws. These apparently conflicting goals can at times place the DENR in a policy dilemma. Our suggestion, therefore, is to spin off the EMB into a separate and independent body, similar to the Environmental Protection Agency in the United States. Fourth, the private sector should be open to a profit-sharing scheme which will assure the government of a more appropriate share in the benefits derived from the resources it owns. Frankly, I'm not suggesting anything that's new. Profit sharing is standard in the oil and gas industry. We have that in Malampaya, as indeed exists in the FTAA regime. In the case of Philex, despite us operating under the MPSA, we have paid 2.3 billion pesos in national and local taxes, representing 37% of our pre-tax income for 2011. Finally, the mining benefits between host LGUs and the national government should be shared more equitably. Further, the national government must ensure the timely remittance of taxes due LGUs. We want to remit our taxes directly to the relevant LGUs if we can, but if there are no rules, most of our taxes are remitted to the national government. After all, mining is location-specific, and I sympathize with LGU's desire to realize the fruits of the resources situated in their communities. So if we continue to stifle mining, the criticism that it promises much and delivers little will be self-fulfilling. Yet when we look elsewhere, mining has been a driver of economic development. Mining in Australia contributes $142 each year, in Canada $37.5 billion, in the US $1.9 trillion, and in Brazil $24 billion. The challenge is precisely to grow mining so that it creates more value added for all of us. But only a larger and healthier industry can enable us to achieve forward linkages in downstream processing plants. We can't have more refineries and smelters simply because there are no economies of scale to make them commercially feasible. So if we keep holding back mining and restraining it, we will forever be